Hi everyone, it's been some time since I posted my last video. It's been almost a month or so, but I've been keeping myself busy in my private life. As you can tell from what I'm sitting on, we finally got a new sofa, so we were doing things like that and some other bits. It's just been keeping me preoccupied. Haven't really found the time to make a video, but now we have, and I thought what better way to start somewhat of a new series, if you will, than sitting on my brand new sofa. So this sort of series really dives into more of the sort of personal side of it. And funny enough, this is sort of a video that I was thinking about making for my family, talking about struggles. It could be anything from religious to financial to career opportunities to family, all these different things. And I weren't actually initially going to post them. I was just going to leave them on my computer, just like a journal, like electronic journal. But I felt like maybe there's some people out there that could still use the wisdom, or whatever you call it. Maybe still find these videos helpful. So today, because we're in, obviously, we've been doing a lot on the military content, I thought let's softly move away from it, but still related to the military. And as you can tell from the title, I'm going to be talking about what the military has done for me personally. So this video is really going to be broken up into four areas. It's sort of moving away from family is one, financial opportunities, and then lastly, personal growth. So the big one for me was moving away from family. And now I know for some people this is not a good thing. It's obviously depending on what your background is. But for me, I really wanted to move away from my family for my own personal reasons that I won't dive into this video. Maybe that's in a couple of videos to come. But I felt like it was really time for me to get out. Didn't particularly like the atmosphere that was in it as well. So it was a big blessing for me. And, even in basic training, it was nice just to finally get out in that environment. And being in the military, and since that point now, it'll be 2 years in April next year coming, when it'll be the 2-year mark from actually starting my career. It's definitely been a journey, and it's been a definite welcome, especially as the times rolled on. From basic to phase 2 to living in my own house, my actual unit. It's just I'm my sort of own person in my own little environment, my own little world, if you will. And it's definitely refreshing. So I know for some people it's obviously going to be it's something that they want to do. They want to move away from home, whether it's because maybe they haven't got a great home life, maybe they just want to, they finally feel like they're old enough to go out there, whatever the case may be. Obviously military facilitates that much more quickly than obviously getting your own place and whatnot, because you're basically in and you've got your own little room or whatever, whatever you got, a house if you're eligible for that. And it just gives you that opportunity to do that as well. And the sort of next thing is money. Now, I know money can be quite somewhat of a controversial topic, if you will. I know you hear, and many civvies know this as well to some extent, is that, when it comes to the financial side, it's usually stereotypical of that the military doesn't pay as well as the civistry. And most of the case, that is true. If you was to just completely focus on the pound sign at the end, a couple of factors to take into it is what you actually do for the money. That's a big one. And I do feel like the lot of freedom that you get within it, you can go and do PT, if you're part of a sport, you might get the afternoon off to go and train, or most of the time you will. If you're that good and you get a talent marker on your profile, then you could spend, I've heard of people sometimes spend 6 months of the year just training and doing their own sports. So it gives you that opportunity while still being paid full whack. And it's also, especially if you're young, if you're 16, I would say between the ages of 16 to 19 or 20, it's a decent wage. Going through basic, you're on what, like 24 or 26 now. I was 18 when I went for it. So it's obviously jumped quite substantially since then. And then when I come out of phase 2, obviously it depends on what role you are. If you're, if you're sort of like, if you're techies like me, you get the higher end of pay. If you're more like HR and people, it's a bit more of the lower end. So it all depends. But generally speaking, it's quite decent, especially if you're 16, 17. So it really sets you up quite positively. And because your outgoings are so little, obviously, granted that, you're not blowing it on stuff, which I know many of you do, Lego and all this other stuff, what I don't know what lads and lasses buy nowadays, but when they have a load of money and then, they're young and whatnot, don't have a lot of responsibilities, you can have a lot of freedom to do what you sort of want with it. But fundamentally, I think when it comes to money, and this sort of leaks into opportunities as well to some extent, because obviously go hand in hand, I think there's a lot of progression, and we'll talk about more like that when it comes to it. And obviously that comes with the money side. Now, I do think, I don't know, how, if this is actually going to happen, but I think, I was sort of dabbling in it, that only really money goes up if you sort of get promoted. And I thought, well, what if people don't want to get promoted? You know, they don't necessarily want that responsibility, but they want to keep. I think it's like the I don't know what Air Force it is. I think it's like Singaporean Air Force, or one of them is where you don't have to rank up to earn more money necessarily, although that can come into it. It's skill based. So if you become extremely competent in your job, you can earn more money, sometimes up to, let's say, equivalent of like sergeant or whatever. Obviously, this Singapore, I don't know if it is Singapore, but it's one of them. And I think that's quite a good way of doing it. You know, there's some people that don't really want the responsibility. They don't really want that. Don't feel like they're good leadership wise, but they're very, very good. They're talented, skillful, whatever you want, you know, whatever word you want to use, on their actual trade. And I think that's something that they should definitely look at in the future. Obviously, whether that was to happen or not, I don't know. Personally, for me, I want to get some level of leadership, although I've done a fair amount of leadership throughout my life. From obviously being in cadets, being young, you know, corporal, sergeant, you have to run little things, little tasks with youngsters and stuff, and then all the way up to workplaces and things like that. So, you know, it'd just be nice to get more on my sort of CV if I was to decide to come out. Obviously, to have that as well as your trade stuff is pretty good. But nonetheless, I feel like the money that you get as well, you know, for me, it was like it was like 30k from phase one, and that's what basically that's 2k less than what I was earning at the post office. Bearing in mind that, you know, when again, that's just looking at a pound note. I'm not looking at what I do for it. You know, I play, I'll go and train football on Monday evening, so I finish work at 3:30. You know, I'll go, there's days I'm part of the shooting club, so I'll go and have a literal day where I'm just loading rounds down the range. Obviously, it's a bit more than just bang, 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 but, you know, you get what I'm saying. So, and there's lots of different opportunities to do stuff. And there's also courses and things, and I guess that comes under opportunities. But again, we'll talk about that in a sec. But fundamentally, for the money, you know, and you look at money in terms of how much your living costs. You know, even if I have a house, I think this house rent-wise is costing me like $280 a month, something like that. Council tax is like $140 or $150. And then gas and electric is probably about $90 to $100, depending on what it was. It was a bit more expensive last year, but, you know, energy prices quite expensive. Anyway, so you're looking at, let's say, £400-500 for me. It's just a two-bed semi-detached house I'm currently in. I will do a house tour at some point, but that's in the future. We're still getting settled. It's a much smaller house than what my other one was. And, you know, if you had two people working, you know, if you're both married or whether you don't have kids or anything like that, and you split, that's £250 each for a house. You know, even if you had £100 to your parents, or even sometimes, but I know people pay more for their parents, you know, £250, £300 for a bedroom at your parents' house, whatever it is. You know, you're laughing, really. And that gives you a much more open, I think we eat relatively well. You know, we go to butcher shop, we shop locally for food and stuff, and we're able to do that because of that money that we have left over. And, you know, even if you didn't want to do it, you want to still eat in a mess or whatnot, even if you're living in a block, and block is like £50 a month and like £4 council tax, what ridiculous it is, and you're on 30k, or, you know, whatever it is, again, depending on your trade, even if it's not 30k, it's a decent flipping wage. You know, you get your taxes, and then you do all the rent stuff for the military, and that's it. Even if you set aside, you know, a couple of hundred for food, if you're going to the mess, or a little bit more if you want to cook, you know, whatever the area is, it's decent. I think it's very, very good. And, you know, I think when it does become not good, though, is when you've been in for over 10 years, and especially if you're on a tech trade like us. I know for like AV and MEX, that they get paid six-figure salaries going over to the Middle East and working on aircraft out there. So I know that's obviously quite a common route for them to go into. However, for my trade in IT and cyberspace, it's such a vast array of different things. You could go into purely infrastructure, which is just like cabling and, you know, all the network inside of it, or you could go into more of the code inside of it for apps, or you can go into cyber security. There's so many different areas that could pay a decent amount. You know, there's people that go up and set up businesses. I know, you know, there was a story, I think, on when I was in phase 2, there was a sergeant who's done maybe like, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years, however long it's been, a decent amount of knowledge, qualifications and stuff. You know, I think like sergeants on between like 40 and 50k roughly. I don't know, it's online, you can find all this out online. And then, you know, he got offered like, I think it was like starting like 65 or 70k starting, and it was 4 days at home, 1 day in the office for his civvy job. So obviously if you get a few years in and you want to, you know, you have to then don't have to deal with like, you know, being deployed. If you've got your family stuff, you want to be a bit more set, then I think that's when the military starts to maybe phase out in terms of money and opportunity and stuff. And then obviously that's something they're black hole they're trying to fill at the minute. Obviously retention is very difficult for them. Recruitment's easy, but I think retention's quite difficult. And they're trying to find ways to supplement that. or maybe not supplement it, but you get what I'm saying, trying to mitigate it maybe is a better way of wording it. So that's, I think, money for the most part, especially at the junior ranks, is very, very good for me personally. And I've got I've got a daughter and a partner and stuff in the house that I have to sort of give money towards, and that's I still think it's a decent. I won't be able to do it in Civvy Street. So opportunities. Then moving on to the next one, opportunities. I think this is obviously quite a stereotypical one that most people know. Although you don't get paid great in the military, or in comparison to in the Civvy Street, the opportunities you get are vast, and especially the training you get is world class in some areas. Obviously, it depends on what again. It depends on what trade it in. But if you're in a tech trade specifically, like me, I don't know what qualifications you could do for like people ops, HR and things like that. But for techies, obviously, especially for my trade, there's just so many different areas of IT, cyberspace, network installation, things like that. I could go and do a fiber optic course and copper course, and that's a legitimate civilian qualification. That's like a level 3 or whatever it is, or a level 3 afterwards. I don't know how it exactly works when you do fiber optic and copper. And again, it's just, and then you get, learning credits, which then will discount that qualification. So instead of it being, let's say, 500 quid or whatever it is in order to get that Civvy qual, you could get 50% reduced, or whatever, whatever the reduction is for your learning credits just from being in the military. So, then you've got the opportunities to go and do degrees and stuff, which is something that I will do eventually. Whether I'll do a degree and become an officer, I don't know. If I decide to I'm going to do 12 years in the RAF, then I probably will go commission, because it just makes logical sense. However, in the meantime, I want to get that technical knowledge, technical experience, before I maybe go into more of a leadership role, which is sort of my guide maybe for the next 5 years or so. But nonetheless, you could go and do a degree. You can go and do many, many different areas. And if you wanted to do maybe stuff on the outside, like you wanted to be an instructor in, I don't know, let's say mountain biking instructor, you can go and get a civilian qualification, because that could be used for FD or AT on the base. So then that's why they need it, if that makes sense. So there's different areas, so you don't have to specifically do trade-specific stuff, although they like to do it, obviously, as trade-specific if you want to use your learning credits. But nonetheless, even if you can't use your learning credits to get the qualification, it's the fact that they still give you that opportunity to go and do it. They give you that time to study and learn and pass your qualification, where if you're working in Civvy Street, it might be, I would assume it'd be a bit more harder. Obviously, I haven't done it, but the military is very, very... I wouldn't say relaxed is maybe not the right word, but they're very, very understanding. Maybe, I don't really know what the right word is, but they give you that time. They almost want you to go out there, because you got to remember, a lot of the military is all about competence. So the more you do, the more you put yourself out there, the more qualifications you do, the more things you volunteer for, the more you're going to get out of it. The more that if you're always on, doing quote unquote the bad jobs, not the very good ones that people want to do, and you're always up for doing it, then when it comes to the cushy jobs, going away and hotels and stuff, they're going to put your name forwards, because they can rely on you to go and do it. It's not just a fact of doing the crap jobs because the job's got to be done, but it's a fact that maybe you don't complain, you get it done, you're a good worker as well. They want good work being done, so then you get picked for the good stuff. That's just the way it's just the way it is. Sort of swings and roundabouts when it comes to good jobs and bad jobs, but again, it all depends on what trade you're in. It's obviously very, very fast. And the last one is personal development. Now, this is probably the biggest one for me. Hopefully I've covered the opportunities side of, if anyone has any questions, please leave it in the comments. I'll try and answer it as best I can. But the personal development stuff is by far probably one I value the most out of everything. You can have money, you can have the qualifications, you can have all the different experience, but at the end of the day, if you haven't got that personal growth, then it's almost like, meaning inside is completely worthless. Money only goes so far. I was watching this YouTube channel, it's totally off topic, but, and it was this sort of a radio show that really focuses on like mental health in like America, but not like mental health is like I'm struggling to find purpose in my life sort of thing. And this guy phoned up and he said he's working a very good job. He earns a very good amount of money, but he's got no partner, no children. He's just got nothing. And he's in his like late 20s, early 30s or whatever it is. And he's just got no meaning in life, and all the money bought all the things he wants. And he's just struggling for that soul thing. And I know that's a little bit off topic from what we're talking about, but the point is that I found that the military has given me a purpose. You're sort of working for something bigger than yourself. Now, I think that's a very, very important thing. I think, and not just that, but I have a family as well. I've got a daughter, a partner, and things like that. So I work for that as well. So it gives you an element of purpose, a reason to go out there. But I think just for the career side of it, even if you don't have that stuff, it gives you, you've got a lot of challenges, a lot of struggles. You know, in basic training, it's the physical or just getting used to military life. And then phase 2, maybe it's more of the technical stuff like I was. Then get into your job. They really give you the responsibility. Like for me, I can't talk too much about what I do, but I've been tasked with something that's very, I wouldn't say technical by any means, but because I didn't have any experience in it and I barely got an introduction, like half-hour introduction into it, I had to really just sort of tread waters, sort of a lot of trial and error. And that really, and now I've got to the point where my knowledge in it is so high. It might not be expert level if there was a level of expert, but it's definitely, you know, up there. I know what this means and that means, and where before I had no clue. And that's just purely from hard work, graft, and a lot of trial and error, many times of pulling my hair out and slamming my head on the desk. Maybe not slamming the head on the desk too much, but yeah, putting my head on the desk, just stressing out because I can't get something to work. But, you know, persistence is key. So I kept going, kept revising it, kept using kept using AI, very helpful when it comes to certain aspects of my job. When it comes to AI, obviously, just doing some of the more smaller stuff on like coding and things like that. And it was really helpful just getting through it. And it's also an accomplishment. Now I know that I've hit this thing that I've been wanting to do, and I've been absolutely pushing through it. And it's not just, it's not just the development sort of within the soul development, as I like to call it, like purpose, meaning, things like that. It's also growing you up as a man or woman. I know you can tread through the military as, maybe a bit immature if you want. You can do that, but it gives you the opportunity to grow. It's what I say to people in my Discord, when people are going away and, I sort of wish them best of luck. I say, get the most out of basic training. Try and learn something about yourself. Try, put yourself in those situations. Well, you're not going to put yourself, they're going to put you in it. Try and, if you never dealt with pressure well, try and learn how to deal with pressure, and you find that you start to do it much better. You find to be more confident in some areas. Just take what you can from it in any instance. I know many people just want to fly through basics and just get to phase 2. I get that. But just try and learn what you can, because you're only going to do basic training once. You're only going to do phase 2 training once. Just make the most of it. Do the absolute best you can. Absolutely give it 100 all the time. And even if you give it 100, but some days you can only give it 80, it will always show. And, you'll have an easier time in basic, I find. You'll learn a lot more about yourself. And that is what life is. The big question of what's the meaning of life, I'm not going to answer that question. But for me, it's always, growing, learning more, and putting myself in those situations, those stressful situations. Not that, I'm being unhealthy stressed, but like at work, I've got this job I need to do. It's going to take me a while to do. But, I want to put myself in it. I want to do good at it. And I want to make sure that it's not only just acceptable, it's absolutely amazing. It's above acceptable. It's on the next 2 or 3 levels up. And that's always been a philosophy of mine, maybe not for my entire life, for more recent years, but I found that then reaps a very good reward, because you're sowing that, not only you're sowing the seed within your workplace and, within your unit, you're reliable, you produce amazing work. They want people like that. It's also within yourself. If you're constantly always striving for the top, not perfection necessarily, but always yourself is trying to be better every day, learn something new, go on that. When you decide to go out in Civvy Street, you're going to have a lot of arguing front, in the sense of, you have a lot of opportunities come your way. You've got a lot of choices that you could choose from. You're not just limited because you put yourself out there and you're renowned for being good work. That's really important. And because you've got the qualifications, because you went out there and you did it, you then put yourself through it, you got more experience. Like I say, when it comes to a civilian job and you go in the interview, for example, you have a bargaining chip. You've got pieces on the chessboard that you can use and maneuver and strategize, and that's really, really important, especially for your older life. And again, it all comes under the personal development, whether it's physical development as well. It's not just the mental side of it, but I think the mental is definitely a big one. Although it's sort of like a nice one, in the sense of it doesn't force it on you. Now in basic, it might force some stuff on you, but at the end of the day, it's your choice. If you want to grow and do well, it facilitates that, gives you loads of opportunities to do it. If you choose not, though, then it's not going to make you do anything, and you can fall behind, and that's not what you want. So I've always promoted, get out there, make something of yourself. When you do your apprenticeship, whatever it is, go for that highest rank. I didn't think I was going to get distinction, but I aimed for it and I got it. And, if I get higher grades and everything, when it comes to Civvy, whatever qualifications I do in a year, when it comes to Civvy Street, all distinctions of all merits or higher, then they're going to go, yeah, flipping out, this is someone that we need. And that's really important. It gives you bargaining chips. That's very, very important to have in your life, especially when it comes to your trade. But I think I've waffled on long enough. I thank you so much for everyone who's supported the channel so far. And I'm looking forward to this next chapter. I hope you guys are too. And I'll see you in the next video, whenever that is. Take care. Bye-bye.